Baton Rouge is a capital city, an industrial city, and a growing city. That growth, however, might be more adequately described as sprawl. Subdivisions, shopping centers, and large apartment complexes have turned what were once quiet little streets or state highways into busy thoroughfares that are unable to handle the large volumes of traffic. This heavy traffic tears up the streets faster, contributes to more accidents, and leads to rush hour jams that grate on motorists' nerves.
There's not too much we can really do with Florida Boulevard. What we need to do is something with some of the other streets, and that's where our problem is. We don't have enough good east-west streets running through our community. We could make Florida Boulevard 8 lanes or 10 lanes, and no matter what we did to it, it would always be just about the level it's at right now and never get any better. We're trying to synchronize the signals. One time we put in a project with the federal government. They turned us down because our unemployment was too low. We had a request in just about a month ago to get a project approved to synchronize the signals. The local office of the Federal Highway Administration recommended our project to their regional office as the #1 project in the state of Louisiana, when the National Federal Highway Administration office selected projects. Lafayette got the first and only project for the state of Louisiana. We're trying to investigate that now and find out just where we went awry on it. The State Legislative Committee on Transportation has just approved the highway program for the state for the coming year, and there were 3 major routes in Baton Rouge that were approved. One of them was Old Hammond Highway from Jefferson Highway out to Florida Boulevard out near Stevendale Road. The street would be made 5 lanes wide, 2 lanes in each direction, with a left turn lane in the center. Consideration is also being given to the possibility of building an interchange at the Airline Highway and thereby relieving some of the problems at that intersection.
And I assume you also are hampered somewhat by red tape between the city-parish government's traffic and Department of Public Works and the state highway department.
Well, there are some problems. We work pretty good with these people, but it's really more than just a 2-way street. It's a 3-way street with the state and the federal government being involved with the city parish. And a 2-way street or a 2-way operation you can pretty well solve. A 3-way operation just gets totally out of hand. If we got approval of a project today to synchronize the signals, optimistically it would be a year before we could actually even hope to see the operation in effect.
In November 1976, the Baton Rouge Department of Public Works suggested the State Highway Department strongly consider building an interchange at Interstate 12 and Millerville Road just east of Baton Rouge. That proposal was rejected. But then, about 15 months later, when the DPW director had made several recommendations to alleviate traffic problems at the intersection of I-12, Sherwood Forest, and Harold's Ferry Road, the Highway Department rejected those recommendations. Instead, it suggested building an interchange at Millerville Road and Interstate 12, the same proposal they had rejected in 1976. Coincidentally, most of the major traffic arteries in Baton Rouge are actually state or federal highways, and this contributes to the mountains of red tape, money problems, and construction priorities. Florida Boulevard, Jefferson Highway, Airline Highway, and Old Hammond Highway are some good examples. Shopping centers, subdivisions, and apartments have been developed so rapidly in what were once outlying areas that neither the state nor city parish has been able to keep up with that growth. A growth that has been so uncontrolled, with little thought given to traffic, sewer, and drainage problems, that in the words of Vic Ayer of the Chamber of Commerce, Baton Rouge has begun to choke on itself. We have found, however, this does not have to be the case.
That old fort behind me was known as Fort Louis de la Louisiane back in 1711. It was the first settlement of the city of Mobile, Alabama. Mobile, Alabama, like many of the cities in Louisiana, is a mixture of the old as well as the new. And there are many other similarities, striking similarities.
Once a base area for French explorers who later settled Louisiana, Mobile became a planned city with a definite pattern for buildings and streets in 1711, 7 years before Bienville built New Orleans. Today, like Baton Rouge, Mobile is an historic city, an industrial city, a rapidly growing city, and one that is blocked on one side by water, Like Baton Rouge, its growth, therefore, is limited to certain directions. But unlike Baton Rouge, at least some of its growth and development is planned for traffic safety and future growth in advance. And unlike Baton Rouge, Mobile's traffic engineer has strong influence in that planning.
One of our major east-west arterials, and this is an example of what can be done with proper planning. The street right-of-way had been reserved for many years, although the street had never been constructed. When residential development occurred on both sides of the street, through neighborhood planning, we had all of the residences face or back up to the major street, face residential streets, and we only have 3 points of access from the neighborhoods into this main arterial street. We have no driveway cuts. We've also planned for future development such that here's an undeveloped section here. Any developer who wishes to develop that, be it residentially or commercially, it'll probably be residentially, will be required by the City of Mobile to have his access at this predetermined and pre-planned point. There will be no other points of access that he can get to this major street.
And they will have to back up to it also?
That's exactly right. We will not allow any direct access into the street, such as driveways or any curb cuts whatsoever.
And when the people put up the fences, they do that at their own expense?
That's exactly right. Now, we do have a street that is planned now that we will, in the plans of the street, actually build the fences for privacy purposes.
McSwain, unlike his counterpart in Baton Rouge, is a full department head and answers only to a city commissioner. But he is sometimes overruled, as in other cities, by political or economic considerations. For instance, this new boulevard in Mobile will not have the limited access that makes Dauphin Street so safe for rapid movement of traffic. But on the other hand, in Baton Rouge, Burbank Drive, the newest thoroughfare in an outlying, undeveloped area, has no provision for strict control of access and building development. In fact, West Lee Drive, which intersects Burbank near Ben Hur Road, has already been built with street stubs along each side of it. This is presumably for the convenience of future commercial or residential development. But presently, citizens in Baton Rouge seem to be primarily concerned with potholes and traffic jams. We'll look at those problems in a moment. For motorists, the most visible and exasperating evidence of a need for street repairs are the potholes and crumbling pavement on streets where they must drive every day. Infuriating as they might be, however, potholes are not necessarily a sign of negligence on the part of the city's Public Works Department. In fact, every city in the country which has had rain or snow and freezing temperatures this past winter is plagued with potholes. So much so, in fact, that Congress is supposed to vote money to help local municipal governments cope with the problem. So if your street is falling apart, your neighbors on the next block or the next may have the same problem. But if repairs are not made within a reasonable time after we start having relatively long periods of good weather, since you can't repair potholes in the rain, you will then have plenty of reason to complain to the city, and you may do so loudly. Next to potholes and crumbling pavement, the motorist's biggest headache seems to come from those long lines of vehicles that stack up at traffic lights, which seem as if they'll never change to green. For instance, this is a scene that occurs daily at Sherwood Forest Boulevard and Old Hammond Highway. This is not a true traffic jam. Those only occur when traffic is stopped altogether for a long period of time. But the situation isn't likely to change until some solutions are forthcoming to handle the large numbers of people who have moved into that section of the city. The virtual mass movement of people to what was once the outskirts of Baton Rouge has given the Traffic Engineering Department multiple headaches.
It's just absolutely chaos. I don't know that our community is very much different than any others, but urban sprawl has just about driven us up the wall. People are moving out into areas that we never imagined they would move out to. Out Tiger Bend Road and Harold's Ferry Road are probably the two best examples. The roads are just not capable of handling the traffic volumes out there, and you can drive it today and see just how bad it is. We're going to improve those, hopefully, again, through a bond issue. But urban sprawl, and maybe what we need is a better planning process. We're letting people develop so rapidly that we're just not able to keep pace with it anymore.
Another problem on Sherwood, from the motorist point of view, is the bike lane put in last year that takes up almost half the boulevard. Situations such as this and the traffic hazard of suddenly merging vehicles often occur because the residents in an area prevail upon the city to narrow the street in order to cut down on rapidly moving traffic. Ironically, we seem to find when a citizen is in his car, he wants free-flowing traffic. But when he steps out of that car at home, he becomes a resident and doesn't want his street used to move traffic. In other words, motorists and subdivision residents each tend to have apathy toward the other's problem. But the question is, can traffic be moved rapidly and safely on major streets and highways? The answer is yes. Mobile, a city approximately the same size and population with many of the same problems as Baton Rouge, does move its traffic, and it does so with fewer accidents, fewer injuries, and fewer traffic deaths. In addition to having its traffic engineer help design new streets and street improvements, Mobile uses computer-controlled traffic signals.
They not so much record the number going through an intersection, but we will have sampling detectors measuring volume of traffic, measuring density as traffic enters the system or leaves the system, and what's happening while it's in the system. In this way, the computer can send information, take this information, assimilate it, and send information back to the system as to number of seconds of green time, the total cycle length, which direction to favor, that sort of thing. These sampling detectors located in the field send information to the computer. These dials are measuring volume, actually the counting of the vehicles in the field, and this is measuring density, how closely spaced the vehicles are. Based on the density readings, we determine how much green time to give to the varying streets. Based on the volume, we determine which progressive system to install or to effect. That is, do we favor inbound traffic, outbound traffic? We have a choice of 6 cycle lengths. This particular system goes from 50 seconds all the way up to 100 seconds. We have 5 different systems. We can favor inbound or outbound or an average system. We also got 2 other systems that are sort of special systems. I can, or the operator can, from this point, overrule all of this information and impose a manual cycle length, for example. We're working on a particular cycle length now simply by changing of a dial here. I remove all of the decision-making capabilities from the system, and I have put in a cycle length that the system is now operating on. I can also take, and although it's operating on an average system right now, I can override that and put it on an outbound system. So we do have certain control capabilities right from this console here.
I assume this must be very expensive. How much would it cost a city to go to a computer-type traffic control?
These are probably some of the more inexpensive computers, and just one of these, the computer itself or the master controller, cost about $30,000. That does not include any of the hardware that's in the system itself at the intersections.
That's $30,000 for each one of these installations.
That's correct. In this room, we've got about $100,000 worth of equipment.
McSwain is quick to admit that the computer is not a cure-all. It has its limitations, and like all computers, there are maintenance problems. But the fact remains, a motorist in Mobile probably gets to work or home faster and with fewer traffic problems than one in Baton Rouge traveling the same distance across the city. This is the city streets and highways of Baton Rouge. Before we can have the most efficient traffic signals, we must have adequate streets. Now, watch these streets. All those considered less than standard for one reason or another have turned red. You can see this includes almost every major street in the city. In addition, there is a need for more streets for future growth. These you now see in blue. This is the major street plan for Baton Rouge. Its cost, in excess of $100 million. So people who want better streets and roads must be willing to pay for those improvements. Construction such as this, the extension of Bluebonnet from I-10 to Perkins Road, is not critical to movement of traffic, but it was moved ahead of other priorities because property developers were able to come up with funds and enough influence to get it started. Interstate 110, handling north-south traffic in Baton Rouge, has been obsolete for years, but improvements are slowly being made. The College Drive Interstate 10 intersection jams up with traffic every afternoon and likely will continue to do so until there are other major thoroughfares available for use. In the words of one city parish official, a bond issue for street improvements and repairs will probably only guarantee that we won't be any worse off 10 years from now than we are today. A method for some sort of continuing funding to handle future growth must be found. And it can't be found if the problem is met with apathy. Apathy from city and state officials, or most of all, the citizens of East Baton Rouge Parish.
Unless we do something in the next year or so and start back in the construction program, things are going to look mighty bleak for us, and they're going to get a whole lot worse before they get a whole lot better.
Isn't it true that if we were to pass a bond issue similar to the one of '65, that about all it would do would be to allow us to stand still due to the projected growth of the city?
Right. With all things equal, assuming that we don't have any energy shortage, assuming that there's no recession or anything like that, people keep buying cars and they keep driving them, the traffic conditions in Baton Rouge, quite frankly, will never get any better. Whether they get any worse or not will depend on whether we synchronize the signals, whether we build some new streets, and whether or not we get the town moving again, quite frankly.
Rather than simply complain, what can a citizen do?
Well, we appreciate the complaints, quite frankly. We'd rather see them more organized. That is, we respond to all complaints individually, but we would like to see groups get together. We would like to see civic associations, say, make up a list of streets maybe that they're interested in seeing on this bond issue program, and send them to me or send them to Mr. Burgess, the Director of Public Works, or contact their councilman with them.
It looks as if the traffic engineer might get his wish. The Chamber of Commerce and several other groups have already begun taking a strong interest in improving streets and drainage for Baton Rouge. But in the words of the Executive Director of the Chamber, Vic Ayer, we don't seem to be getting much momentum from public officials. It hardly takes more than a glance to see the needs. Streets and highways that are obsolete or badly deteriorated, unsynchronized traffic signals, and intersections that constitute a nightmare for the traffic engineer as well as motorists. Though we can see that almost every major thoroughfare in the city needs improvements, apparently somebody did something right in the past, or Baton Rouge would not be as modern and successful as it is today. Mobile, the city we used as a comparison to Baton Rouge, has problems too, and very possibly has problems that Baton Rouge does not have. But they began several years ago to plan for future growth and to design traffic thoroughfares that will handle vehicle traffic efficiently. In addition, building restrictions in Mobile on the newer streets helps eliminate the congestion so common on major commercial and residential streets in Baton Rouge. And the capital city of Louisiana should be able to do this too.